We go. Hello and welcome to episode 172 of the Rollo and Slappy Show. Today is November 25th, 2019. I am Rollo McFlugel, and with me is Slappy Jones 2, and we are both from McFlugel.com. The show notes page for this episode will be McFlugel.com/172, where you'll be able to find links to things like our sponsor, LibertyMugs.com, where you can buy awesome Libertarian-themed mugs. And be on the lookout. We're going to be announcing our Black Friday sale. And then it's that time of year, so we're going to be rolling into the Christmas sales after that. And also, you'll be able to find links to ways to follow our guest, who Slappy is going to introduce right now.
Yeah, welcome to the show. We have the Libertarian-in-Chief, Todd Hagopian. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, we were saying this before we went on. This is pretty cool because we followed Todd for a long time on Twitter, and now we get to talk to him. And I think it's awesome, Todd. I don't know what you were thinking when you first went on that other podcast with whatever those guys' names are, Bar and Curd, whatever they are. But you had a great sense of humor, and you were a great guest, and so we're very happy to talk to you. So welcome to our show.
Well, I appreciate the invite to the real thing now.
I mean, I don't like talking money, but I'm kind of curious how much they paid you. I mean, you're doing the whole Libertarian Party thing, so we know that there's just like dirty money there. So
yeah, it's pretty wild how much money I've made since.
Yeah, I'm sure this has just been an absolute huge money grab for you. Just no stress.
I paid for that endorsement though, so that money went the other way.
So anyway, Todd, you're running for chair of the National LP.
That's right.
How's it been going?
It's been really interesting. So I think I announced 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it has been kind of a whirlwind. So the good of it is I'm having multiple calls a day with, high-level LP people who have run for office, people who are involved in the national party or their state party. I'm learning a lot about what I don't know. I'm talking to people about my vision, and people are kind of catching on. So that part's really good. There's another side to it of there's some hardcore libertarians out there who have spent 20 or 30 years on this thing,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to be hard to jump on board with a newcomer. And so those discussions have been equally as interesting.
Sure. I'm sure.
I mean, I think overall I'm very good with criticism, and it's been fun on both sides, but I'm having a blast talking to people about how to grow the party and how to professionalize the party and really get us prepared to grow, which is almost more important than growing.
Gotcha. So I think you have I'm sure a lot of people listening to this have listened to you on the Fadcast, but can you go over kind of what your plan and goals are for being the Libertarian chair? Unless Slappy, you had something else you wanted to.
Yeah, just to step it back even before that real quick. I'm just curious, what is the process like to run for chair? Do you just announce you're going to do it, and then you have to get in front of delegates and go around and figure out how to get your name out there? I mean, is there any, like, how did that work? I guess you had to register for the party or.
Yeah, so somebody approached me. We had a number of discussions. I talked to a number of other people about this, and essentially it's an unpaid position, right? You've got to work 10 to 30 hours a week unpaid, and so who would want to do that? I don't know, right? So you decide that you're passionate about it enough that you run, you announce your run, and then essentially there's like 900 or so delegates, that'll end up at the national convention, and the delegates are the only people that get to vote. Every state gets to pick their own delegates. No states pick any delegates until January 1st.
Okay.
So right this second, I don't even know who's voting.
Right.
What I do have is a list of thousands of people who used to be delegates, who would be delegates again.
Gotcha. Yes.
But more importantly, I reach out and I talk to people, and everyone knows I'm running now. So I talk to people who want to be delegates, and I talk to them about what I'm doing, and people give advice, or I'll ask questions and learn more about what they're focused on and what they like about the platform and what they don't. And that's essentially what I'm going through now. After January 1st, at each convention, they start doing the delegate process, or other states have different ways of doing it. But they do the delegate process, and slowly we start to see who the delegates are going to be. So a lot of candidates will actually go to all the conventions if they have the money. That's not going to be me. So I'm going to be doing a lot of radio. I'm going to be doing a lot of phone calls. I'm going to be doing a lot of emails and trying to do personal touches with the delegates. But I'm not going to try and go every weekend to a different convention.
Sure. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your message? We do have a fair amount of libertarians who listen.
Sure.
I'm sure we have a few delegates who are listening. Why should they vote for you? What do you got?
Yeah. So basically 3 planks to this platform. The first plank is professionalize the Libertarian Party. That's from both a financial perspective, an organizational perspective, but almost most importantly, from a focused strategy perspective. The second part is to create a core branded message that everyone in the country understands what a libertarian is, because I think that's a sore missing point right now as we try to grow the party membership. And the third part is to win local elections. So focus all of our time and money on winning local elections, which I believe will raise the tide for state and federal elections. I don't think you can win president before you have your first 20 House seats. And I don't think you can have your first 20 House seats before you win your first one. And I don't think you'll win your first one till you have 1,000 local seats.
Sure. So one thing I will say, and we've talked about this on this show, I like your second plank the most, I think, because I don't always want to tell people I'm a libertarian because I don't know how that'll be received by them.
Yeah.
It could mean a million different things, and I don't feel like answering all the questions or saying, no, that's not what I think or whatever. So while I do consider myself libertarian, I don't really tell people that.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, right? And when we talk about what a libertarian is, we use the most obnoxious terms possible. We're like, no anarchist, no ANCAP, no Republican lights, it's like no other party talks like this, okay? Democrats care about minority rights, and they want the rich to pay the fair share.
Mm-hmm.
Republicans want less taxes so that businesses grow faster and we all profit, right? Now, does any of that ever happen? Probably not, right?
No,
but they
of course
have
not.
Brand.
But you're exactly right.
Yeah, they can literally double an already $12 trillion budget to almost $24 trillion in 10 years and still have this brand of being small government.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
And what's a libertarian? Who knows? Nobody knows what a libertarian is. So what if this was a libertarian? What if we were the party of dramatic reform? And that's the only brand we talked about. Dramatic military reform. No more wars. Dramatic criminal justice reform. No crimes without victims. Dramatic fiscal reform. Less spending, less taxes. If you like how politics is going right now, vote for the Republicans or the Democrats. If you don't, then vote for dramatic reform.
So I do like that. That's a lot different from what we hear from a lot of stuff with the Libertarian Party, for sure. I think most people would agree that it's kind of lost its way, and it's even, from the highest positions in it, that it's kind of, we'll call it an enigma. So for people, and correct me if I'm wrong, Slappy, but I'm going to speak for you for a second. But people like Slappy and I, we're both kind of in the ANCAP world, and we're not that interested in politics, and we've kind of sworn it off and don't really have much interest in politics in general, or even being a part of the Libertarian Party, regardless of the people there or not. So what's your pitch to people like us?
Yeah,
why do you think that we should kind of not throw that aside, but reconsider our position there?
And I also, just to add to that, not that I don't know how active I would be even if I did decide to sign up. I mean, I'm not going to go to any conventions. I'm not going to be a delegate. I'm not going to go to the convention down in Texas. I have kids. I have a job, and when I'm not working, I'm usually hanging with my family. And like you just said, and this is for Libertarian Chair, not Libertarian Party member, but you're putting a lot of time into this, a lot of unpaid time. And I feel like people who volunteer for presidential candidates and running and campaigning, they put a lot of time into it too. And I just, personally don't have a whole lot of interest in doing that. So what would you say to someone like me and Rollo?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And I think the first thing you have to look at is who should we be targeting to be the next libertarian voter, right? And a lot of times the libertarians don't focus on Republicans and Democrats. And I think that's wrong. I think who we actually should focus on are you guys. Okay, so there's 20% of the population that would even consider voting for libertarian. Okay, the rest of the 80% right now probably wouldn't, at least until the party's legitimized. Okay, now you guys believe in liberty. You believe pro-liberty ideas. And there are several different reasons why you may not be voting right now. Either one, you don't care. Two, you don't think your vote counts. Or three, you don't have a candidate that you get excited about. Okay? Now, if you don't care, that's going to be a hard one to figure out, right? But not counting is something that we can work on, and not having the right candidate is something we can work on. So, for example, the last presidential election, Gary Johnson ran in all 50 states. Well, how often was he in Montana? Okay, Montana, he got 5 or 6% of the vote. What if he took, or even New Mexico, where he was governor, he got 9% of the vote. What if he took all of his money and had focused on just 1 or 2 states and had gone after the non-voters, which are the important segment? So the non-voters are the easiest ones to convert. And you have to focus on 2 things. How do you increase the willingness to vote? And how do you decrease the cost of obtaining that vote? And those 2 things can be done in that non-voter little L category who already believes what you're saying, just needs the attention. They need to understand that they can drive change, and they need a candidate to get behind. And so if you had gone to Montana and spent an inordinate amount of time in states that Republicans and GOP don't go to, and convinced that little L Montana that their vote would count because you're going to send a message to Washington that we need dramatic reform, then you start to get all these folks on board. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're probably right. I think a lot of people go in and just pull the lever for all Republicans and all Democrats and don't think of it. So, yeah, I mean, I think it would be hard to convert one of them. So, yeah, I'd say probably going after non-voters is a good start. But, Raul, you have anything on that?
No, just I do a little bit because it's. I mean, for me, I have a hard time thinking that politics is a good way to solve our problems. And not that I'm sitting there, because there's been a lot of libertarians, a lot of anarchists that have come out and said that they're going to join the Libertarian Party. And trust me, I don't sit there and get all cranky about it. I don't lose sleep over them doing that. I'm indifferent about it. If that's where you think your best your skill set is best served, trying to enter the political realm, that's up to you. But there's an opportunity cost for a lot of people. If I, all of our time is scarce. If I decided that I wanted to be active in the Libertarian Party, that would mean I have to give up something else. So I guess my question is why what would you tell a libertarian that says, hey, I think I'd rather do, XYZ instead of being involved with politics? Why would politics, getting involved with the Libertarian Party, be a better use of their time as opposed to, being an activist or, building something or otherwise?
Well, I think it's an interesting question. I'll answer in 2 parts. So first part is, there's a difference between getting involved in the Libertarian Party and voting Libertarian. Okay, and sometimes libertarians lose track of that because you can't be a real libertarian if you're not an activist and if you're not driving people to vote. And that's the wrong message, right? There are 20 million more votes for Democrats than there are people in the Democratic Party. Okay, there's 20 million people that vote Democratic that aren't a member of the party. There is a place for people who can't devote time and energy to the Libertarian Party to still realize that their vote matters and it helps the cause. Now, going to how would you get people to spend more time and money on the party? A lot of this comes down to the talk about focus. Okay, if you can get 99% of the hours in this party, hours and dollars in this party are basically volunteer hours, right? And so I'm a strong believer of you pay your employees what they earn, not what they want to earn. Okay, when you start to get more efficient and more effective with your money, when you start to use it to win local elections instead of get 0.01% more in a federal election, people will be more willing to get involved. They'll be more willing to put their time, money, and effort behind your strategies. And so I think one of the things you have to do is show people that their money is being used more effectively, that the message is being spread, that your local city council member now is a libertarian and is actually preaching some ANCAP ideas in the mainstream, where people suddenly realize that ANCAP is not out of mainstream. There are actually some good, criminal justice ideas and whatnot that are very relevant at the local politics level.
Okay. Let's how do you think you can affect the kind of the local politics and get like the criminal justice one is a big one. We're seeing a lot of these issues pop up. So what do you think is an effective strategy for making changes there?
Yeah, so I think this is a really interesting topic, and I get a lot of pushback on this, but I think that there's tens of thousands of races out there that are nonpartisan and low barriers to entry. So low signature counts, low filing fees, where you do not have to run against an R or a D. Okay, it's not about running away from the L. It's just about getting away from your deal where they're so used to pulling the lever for all R's or all D's. Okay, so there's an Oklahoma gubernatorial candidate, and he went out and he got a few percent of the vote, did great. I know him. He wound up in 2019 running for a city council race. Okay, did everything the same. Went out and campaigned the same, went out and, phone banked less money, into this race because there's a little city council race. He had two competitors. He got 60% of the vote and he won as a libertarian. He hid nothing. He talked about being a libertarian. He went out and beat these guys. So what I would do is figure out what 1,000 races out there, nonpartisan, low barriers to entry, what 20 to 50 races in every state we should be focusing on, and then drive the state parties to put a good candidate into these nonpartisan part-time positions. So you could have the $150,000 lawyer go out and be the mayor of your city. You could have the $150,000 big businessman go out and be the county commissioner, and you could put people into the sheriff department where they can actually decide that they're not going to enforce certain laws, or they're going to at least talk about the fact that these laws are a waste of public resources. And at that moment, all these folks are starting to talk to the everyday people. You're getting that liberty wording in there without having this big libertarian tag attached to you, even though you're not hiding the fact that you're a libertarian, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. I had Slappy, do you have anything else kind of in this realm? Because I had kind of changing directions in the conversation a little bit, but there's and we kind of touched on a little bit earlier, but there's a certain kind of mood of the Libertarian Party, or just kind of general, and I think a lot of people attribute that being driven by the current leadership in the party. But I was kind of thinking about it over the last few days, and is that because of it's the not so much the leadership is driving that, but they're just kind of downstream of what the general mood of what libertarians are? Because I think at least in my world, in our kind of Twitter world of libertarians, we tend to be a little bit more on the pure side. But I've talked to a lot of people. Or just going when I used to go to the Philadelphia Liberty on the Rocks, and I used to get into an argument every time just about like taxation with people. And there's a lot of people that call themselves libertarians that really kind of have not quite there on libertarianism. So, and this is kind of a long rambling question, so I hope it all makes sense. But a lot of people talk about kind of earlier on a couple years ago, or maybe a decade or so ago, with Harry Brown. He brought a lot of people to the Libertarian Party. He was great with messaging, brought a lot of people in, and ever since then, the messaging hasn't been so great. Is it that when the Libertarian Party gets popular and adds more people, that it brings in kind of the more normies and the milquetoastness, that it causes this I don't want to say pure, but because that's got a connotation, but it makes the actual libertarianness suffer. So that when you get to the point where you reach a point where it's like, we're kind of seeing this, the party's not libertarian anymore. We need to kind of get it into a better direction, which is good. But then you bring a lot of people in, and then you just end up with kind of bringing in people that aren't libertarians, but are bringing,
Yeah. It's a really good question, a really important question. And this is what I would say is, there's kind of two ends to the spectrum today, right? There's the purity test spectrum that a lot of little libertarians will use. There's the watered down spectrum that the leadership of the party uses today, which is basically, if you believe in one or two planks of the party, you're welcome to be a libertarian. Actually, if you believe in no planks of the party, but the delegates vote for you, you're welcome to be part of the libertarian.
Like, libertarians for Dick Cheney.
Yeah, so exactly. So, I mean, that's watered down. The purity test is the opposite. We have 34 planks. There's one. I had somebody today. I said, "Hey, I'm pro-life." They said, "You're out. Get out."
Well, yeah, that's funny because Slappy and I are pro-life.
Yeah. And so there's 33 out of the 34 planks I agree with. This guy wanted to kick me out. Okay, that's a purity test. Not what I'm arguing for and have already today, so I don't want to repeat myself too much, but it's this targeted approach. None of us, very few of us, were born a libertarian.
I wasn't.
There over time. Some of us had a big aha moment. Others of us took years of self-reflection and slowly changed issue by issue. And I don't know if you guys know, but when I started messing around with the Factcast, they called me the biggest normie libertarian. I don't know if you've noticed, but I've kind of shifted, I think, in my eyes.
Yeah.
Towards your side. And now, did that happen because I thought they were cool guys? No, it happened.
It definitely wasn't that.
Yeah, we know that.
So it was self-reflection. It was being exposed to new viewpoints, and I slowly got there. And that's why with this targeted, focused, branded approach, where you say, if you believe these things, come over and have more conversations. It doesn't mean all you have to do is believe these things and you're a libertarian. It just means we're not going to shut you out anymore for not believing these other things. Come on over. Let's bring you along, because people are going to be almost libertarian before they become libertarian. That's the order of things. So let's not kick them out for being almost libertarian. So I'm kind of, I don't know if that's too wishy-washy, but what I'm basically saying is it's not a watered down version. You have to draw some lines in the sand. But if they cover that line, then bring them over and keep coming with them. Bring them over. Stop kicking people out because they're not there yet, or else they'll never get there.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good answer. I certainly don't have an answer to that question. It's tough. It's frustrating. You want to be welcoming. You want to bring in as many people as you want, but you also you don't want to bend to people, because there is a point where you do want to say, well, this disqualifies you from being a libertarian if you don't believe certain things. It's tough, and I don't know where that line is. And I don't mean that necessarily within the party, but where do you, and this is kind of going out of the scope of the Libertarian Party stuff, but where do you draw, is there a line with what constitutes a libertarian? I'm just curious to see what you have to think about that.
I honestly tried desperately, and forget about Libertarian Party stuff, because that's all brand new, right? Until 3 weeks ago, I didn't care about the Libertarian Party from a being judged standpoint, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't believe in purity test, period. Okay. I think that if you have 10 or 15 things that are very libertarian about you, but you're in favor of the death penalty, I'm okay with you. You know what I mean? Like I was too until
Sure.
I wasn't. You know.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of people that are pro-choice that are willing to talk to me because they believe eventually I'll move over. I don't think I will, but I have on several other issues. You know what I mean? So I hate the purity test, but what I will say is when somebody has one or two issues, let's say Tulsi Gabbard, you know, anti-war, is she a libertarian? Well, no, she's kind of a socialist. You know what I mean? But she has a libertarian position. You know, Andrew Yang has some interesting theories. That doesn't make him a libertarian. You know, so there's a difference between being a libertarian or calling somebody a libertarian that doesn't want that title and stopping somebody from coming in who actually is interested in the ideology. You know, I think that's where I stand.
Yeah. No, I think that's pretty good. The purity testing does annoy me too, and I'll admit I sometimes do it a little bit.
We're all guilty, right? We all say, well, a real libertarian wouldn't say that. You know, that's come out of my mouth before, and I hate myself for it right when I say it. But at the same time, I meant it when I said it. You know,
Right.
But I mean, you know, we all do that.
So I think you are a good person to talk about this. So how, like, for you know, the hardcore ANCAPs, you know, very strict libertarians, what do you think? What advice do you give to them to say, like, because we joke about it, and I just saw a meme today where it was two pictures of Gordon Ramsay, and it's like, this is me talking to a friend of mine about libertarianism, and it's a picture of Gordon Ramsay with a little girl with like his arm around his shoulder and be like, oh honey, you should, you know, this, and then here's me talking to strangers on the internet, and it's him like screaming in someone's face. So it is tough because I have been trying, I always try, or not always, but have been trying to make a concerted effort to just like trying to be nicer and more patient with, but it's tough.
Everyone's so stupid.
It's really, really tough because you go on Twitter and you just see the worst opinion ever, and you just want to jump down their throat. And I'm not saying this to be like, oh, well, you're not, because you're based. I mean, we agree on 99.9% of things, I think. But still, I think there's a lot of anarchists that might look at you and be like, oh, well, he's a whatever. So what do you think our messaging should be? How do we get better as ANCAPs and?
Well, here's the first thing to understand is the Libertarian Party is not unique at all in that regard, right? Look at the Democratic debate. You've got socialists on the stage. You have conservatives on the stage. You even, for the first time in a long time, have an anti-war person on the stage. You know what I mean? You have a universal basic income person on the stage. I mean, you have all these different sectors of the party. We have the same thing. And that doesn't mean you guys aren't special, because you are. but the Libertarian Party is not unique, right? And so what my suggestion would be, and how I started spreading libertarian for myself, even when I was more of a complete pragmatist, right, is put it in words that people can understand, and it's not an attack, and tweet out things that mean something to somebody's everyday life. So let me give you an example. The whole Libertarian in Chief moniker came from me deciding that nobody knew what a libertarian was. So I changed the moniker, and I started tweeting out these things that said, as president, I would do blah, blah, blah. And all I was doing was taking things directly from the platform and making it in a way that people would understand kind of how that affects their lives. Okay. And people started retweeting it. I started getting messages. All of a sudden people thought I was running for president. And I was like, no. This is just a joke. And I had to actually stop doing those tweets because it was just a joke. But my point is by putting it in short, easy to understand ways that it affects your life and makes sense. The ANCAP position makes sense to people, or makes people think. I got a ton of positive feedback. Once I started not doing that again, then I got into all the fights that we all get into on Twitter. So I try. You'll see most of my tweets tried to take something that's happening today, boil it down into how it affects you in your life, or could affect you in a hypothetical, so that people can understand say it's real easy for people to be like, well, red flag laws, they protect you. They don't really hurt anybody. You just get your guns lost for a little while. Okay, well, once you start putting that into a, what if somebody took away your free speech for 7 days, or your due process for 4 months, or this and that, and who gets to decide? Your nosy neighbor Rose, you know what I mean? She gets to take away your due process for 4 months. So, I mean, that's kind of what I would say is there's ways to have that discussion. Now, can you go after people? Sure. I mean, we all do that. I try not to now. I've been really careful not to. But it's hard. There's dumb people all over the internet. And my wife we always make fun of her because she'll be like, someone's wrong on the internet. Well, yes, most people are wrong on the internet.
Gotta fix it. It's your job to fix it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think my use of muting and blocking on Twitter has been the greatest decisions of my life.
One of the hardest parts about this race was somebody was like, you really need to unblock everybody.
Yeah.
And so now I've got millions of trolls back on me all over me.
All right, so one thing I we'll throw this out there. It was a big issue in certain circles of the Libertarian Party, I guess. Now, just a side note, the Libertarian Party, as we've been saying, has really annoyed me. Even from years ago, I wanted to check out our local county LP, and I exchanged a couple emails, and I thought these guys are clowns. I don't even remember what we talked about, but they never tried to get me. They never followed up after that. They weren't like, hey, you didn't come to a meeting. I mean, there was no – but that's a side note. We're in the Philadelphia area here, Rallo and I, and one of the guys in our area is Maj Toure, who I think has done an amazing job promoting liberty in the hood, in a place where you don't hear it. And then I guess he was supposed to speak at the convention or whatever, and now he's not. Do you have any, what happened with that? Why did that happen? This was really annoyed me.
And this is not a silly subject. This is an important subject. And I'm the only one that's been out there talking about this, and because nobody wants to step on these eggshells, right? So at the end of the day, what happened was Maj was a bit of a firebrand.
Of course.
He was a minority, believed in gun rights, libertarian. Most of his platform, again, he wouldn't pass anybody's purity test, probably.
Right.
And they said, this guy's great at speaking. He's good. He has an awesome message. We're going to make him, the keynote. Great. Well, halfway through his race, he and a donor got in a big fight. And Maj said some stuff that he should not have said. Very derogatory. And we could go into both sides. I spoke to Maj the day that he left the Libertarian Party. I spoke to him on the phone and got his whole side of the story. There's two sides to every story, but he said some stuff that he probably shouldn't have said. It deeply offended a lot of libertarians, but more importantly, it deeply offended the donor, who rallied a lot of libertarians to get rid of him. The Libertarian Party essentially fell silent during the last part of Maj's run, because no one really knew where to fall, in this argument. Maj lost the race, and then I think within 24 or 48 hours, suddenly got the call that he was no longer the speaker. And not only that, but it wasn't a vote; it was just a unilateral decision by the person who headed the committee. Now the story comes out that they kind of all talked and they were going to vote that way anyway, and this guy just took it upon himself to tell Maj. And either way, that's not how committees are supposed to work, right? You have the vote, and then you do something about it. And so the problem I have with it is twofold. One, Maj never changed. He was the same guy when we picked him as when we fired him. You know what I mean? Like, same person. But the way we handled it, which is the second part, was just so unprofessional. It was out in the open. It was not done with a vote. There was no consensus. And we did it publicly. And he had told them that if they did this, because he started to feel like it was going to happen, that he would quit the party. And they did it anyway. And not only that, but they didn't offer him anything. Secondary speaking spot, something else at the convention. It was just, you're dumped. We found a more popular girl. Now, Larry Sharp is awesome. I love Larry.
Oh, sure.
He probably should have been the convention speaker to begin with, right? But all happened to Maj was terrible. And like you said, he went out into a place we've never, ever recruited before, got his message out, and got people to show up. And did he win? No, he didn't win, but he got thousands of votes in Philadelphia.
He did, where there isn't, I mean, yeah, we have plenty of libertarians around, but if you know city council in Philly, there's not too many libertarians anywhere near it.
No, and he did a great job, and he could run. He could have run for something again.
Yeah.
But now he's probably going to run as a Democrat.
And,
so
yeah.
We lost somebody good, over all this, and it was just unprofessional. It was just, we did him totally wrong.
And that's just another point, I guess, about the Libertarian Party is it's a political party like any other political party, and the donors are going to run things. So you're out there talking to donors. You're talking to delegates or potential delegates. The kind of way that we think the ANCAP, Mises, Rothbard wing, it doesn't seem like most of the Libertarian Party is that way. Has that been your experience? Do you think the reason Nick Sarwark got elected again last time and the reason Bill Weld was nominated is because there just really aren't that many libertarians that I would consider small L libertarian, Mises Rothbard's types in the party? Are we really that much of a minority in the Libertarian Party?
I think so. The Mises Caucus, I think, only started in 17, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're relatively new at the 18 convention, and they did pretty good. Joshua Smith, who had very little experience at the time, had a decent showing against Nick Sarwark. And so I would say that my experience so far on the campaign has been that the Mises Caucus is incredibly prevalent. Now, in the traditional delegates, the folks who I talked to tonight, in New York, maybe not so much. Those were more of the traditional libertarians, probably Sarwark and company. And so the question is how many Mises folks are going to be elected as delegates? But here's what Dave Smith always says, right? There's only 15,000 sustaining members in the party. And the sustaining members are the only ones who get to provide delegates. And Dave Smith has like 30,000 listeners. I don't know how many. Probably a couple fewer than you guys. But he's got like 30,000 listeners. And so, if half of his listeners were to join the party, they could just take it over. And so I think that's something important for ANCAPs and Mises guys to think about is if you join, you can be a dominant force in this party because of the way that we've set it up, right or wrong. You can come in and be a dominant force in the party. And I think we need more Mises folks. And by the way, they're better at fundraising. They've done an incredible job at fundraising. They've given to local candidates. They've won races. And I think what you're going to find is Joshua Smith and other Mises candidates are going to be incredibly successful at this next convention.
So speaking of raising money and back a little bit to the Maj Touré issue with the donors, and I don't want to talk about anyone specific because the donor in question, I don't know anything about him. But just as a general question, and Slappy kind of talked about it too, with it being a political party. So donors are not an insignificant part of politics and everything. And so if you've got a donor, like where do donors fall into play? Like if you've got a donor that maybe they're not supportive of exactly what the platform is and what you are, but they've got a big pile of money that they're interested in donating. Like how do you deal with that? Because even just me thinking about it, putting myself in someone like your shoes, where it's like, well, I mean, if they we could do a lot of good stuff with that money, but
exactly,
how do you get their money, big donors' monies, without compromising? And I'm not saying that anyone's going to do that, but just the situation if it presents
Well,
itself.
money's
how do
important.
you navigate that? Yeah.
Yeah, it's important to get those donors, but there's also important to be libertarian. So,
In other words, it's a really
tough job.
position to be in that I'm not envious of it at all.
Yeah. So I think, and let me start off by saying that I don't think that this is my idea. I think that we do some of this today. I don't know if we do enough of it, but let me just start with that. So when you're going after a donor, compromising your principles is, well, okay, this part we don't do. Compromising your principles is not acceptable. Mm-hmm. Okay, we did that with Maj, I think, kind of, and then we did it more importantly with Weld, where we went after the guy who we thought could bring the most money to the race. When I think everyone would agree right now, Larry Sharp was a better option. So what do you do? How do you get a donor who might not agree with everything you do to give you money? Well, I think you do very targeted programs. So people have gotten on me for not donating a lot of money to the party, the national party, right? And it goes back to what I told you. I pay people for what they earn, not for what they want to earn. So I've given a lot of money to individual political campaigns where I know the money will be used better. $300 in this campaign means a whole lot. You know, $300 out of $2.7 million to the national party, not so much. So if you go to the donor and they have $20,000 and they say, hey, I really don't want you talking about anything to do with LGBTQ. Okay. I don't like it. I want you to have my money, but I don't want you to talk about that. Offer them targeted ways to use that money. Okay. What do you want to talk about? What's important to you? Well, I want, anti-war. Great. This is going to go into the anti-war fund. Your $20,000 and 0 cents will be spent messaging anti-war. We promise. You know what I mean? And that's ways that you can get these folks. If you look at some of our biggest donors, what you'll realize is a lot of them are big Republican donors and big Democratic donors. Mm-hmm. One question you have to ask yourself is, are they doing it to help the Republicans or the Democrats? Or are they doing it because they like our party and they want to foot in there, just to dabble? Either way, you have to find a good reason for them to give you their money if you're after it, and really give them value for what they're offering. But that value should not come at a compromise, and it does not have to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty good answer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I'm glad. If someone's gonna do it, it's better you than us. So, all right, time for some really, really important questions.
Wait, before you get to the important ones, I have one more thing I want to bring up to you because I know you were following the situation. Do you have any thoughts on that Whiskey Warrior?
Yes. Thank you for asking that. I think it's important, and I have obviously been tied up for the last 5 hours, so I haven't heard if any new facts came out. But here's the deal: screw the facts, doesn't matter. The discussion needs to be about red flag laws and whether or not this is good. Okay, the facts that I know of are somebody went to his house on some kind of complaint. They supposedly heard a gunshot. More officers showed up. He retreated. Then more SWAT teams showed up, militarized the neighborhood, kicked everybody out, went on for 7 hours, all kinds of misinformation, story changed multiple times, and suddenly it was all over sexual or physical assault, I guess, whatever. That can't possibly be true. It would have been the first statement the police made, not the fourth, 24 hours later. Doesn't matter. So let's pretend for a minute that it wasn't a red flag law. Who cares? What we just learned is how people are going to respond to red flag laws when they are completely unconstitutional. We don't get to decide when people lose their constitutional rights without any form of due process. I'd argue you don't get to decide it even with due process, but let's just say for a minute that you at least need due process before you start to lose certain rights. So, I think what this taught us is a few things. It taught us how people who don't want to be arrested for not committing a crime act. And that shouldn't have been a surprise. We don't like to get arrested when we don't do anything wrong. It also taught us what people do when people in their community start to get arrested for not doing anything wrong. Okay, people rally around, they go to the cemetery, they're ready to fight. This kind of stuff is going to happen. And it also showed what happens when police overreact. If this was a domestic assault discussion, then why all the armored cars? If it was a red flag confiscation, why all the armored cars? Why evacuate the entire neighborhood, at 9 p.m. at night? I think there's so much to this that just showed how these laws can go horribly wrong. How did it start? We don't know. Do we have a right to know? I don't even know if that's part of the law. Do we get the explanation, or is it just always hidden forever? Can I make 25 red flag calls? Or am I limited to 2 because I'm a crazy person if I'm turning in everyone? None of this stuff. I guess that was a long rambling answer to the basic concept of the facts of this case don't even matter. What matters is it highlighted how bad red flag laws can go and how much worse that could have been had he actually had guns. And he didn't. He didn't even have a gun. It's like,
yeah, it's pretty crazy. And I don't know the facts. I don't know that anyone does, but just the fact that I mean, it's at least been reported that they were cutting off internet and cell phone service and had armored cars there, and a militia was formed in a couple minutes. So I think I'd say it's encouraging, I guess, in some respects. It's also very scary in seeing what could happen. But hopefully they don't enforce any of these red flag laws because this is what will happen.
I mean, all you have to do is have 1 or 2 people. I mean, I've got 6 guns at home. You know what I mean? You got a lot of normal folks have a bunch of weapons.
Sure.
If you're trying to take those away, you run into the wrong guy, and it's going to turn into something like that. I think it's and I don't even understand. I mean, pre-crime has never ever worked. So World War II, we put 120,000 Japanese in internment camps because Japanese were bad. I mean, and now, everybody in the country recognizes that was a mistake.
Right.
And now we're doing it here. We're just taking away a right from a certain group of people based on fear from another group of people. And it's not even majority rule. That would be bad enough. It's not even majority rule. It's like a tip. It's like,
Yeah, it is pretty crazy. I think it was last summer or the summer before that there was a couple houses behind mine they did a meth bust on it, and they brought in like every rig and everything going on. I heard like sirens and stuff and weird like megaphone things happening and then like real loud stuff. Ended up finding out they were firing flashbangs into the dude's house. It was a meth house, and they're firing flashbangs into it. So
it's
so it's.
Sorry.
No, it was just at the end. I was kind of hanging out in the backyard, trying to listen to it, and then it eventually happened. I heard them, on the megaphone directing the guy to come out, and I was waiting for a gunshot.
Yeah.
To hearing, to get this guy killed, but fortunately that didn't happen. So, but yeah, it is scary. It happened in basically my backyard.
Yeah.
It's not a good thing. Reading on, little Facebook posts or next door posts, and people are like, yeah, I was just driving out of my driveway, and all of a sudden a cop with a rifle jumps out and says, get back in your house. And it's like, whoa, what's going on? It's not the, a meth house isn't a good situation, but man, the police just like running around in your backyard with a rifle, jumping out of bushes. That's not the world I want to live in.
Well, and it's why I always talk about the sheriff races being so important. I mean, when's the last time you got pulled over? How many cops showed up? Right. I think the last time I got pulled over, 4 cops showed up.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
It's like, okay. I have no warrant.
I had 3 the last time I got pulled over.
Yeah, I had.
What do you guys? I only had 1.
I forgot to turn my headlights on.
Oh, yeah, I had an expired tag.
I had a.
It's like, so 4 cops showed up for an expired tag, and it's like, these guys. I mean, so they do this, this huge demonstration of force, and then they go even overboard whenever there's something like this. So I mean, I don't know. I think they made it. They were the ones that made it bad. right? If he had just gone into his garage and the cops had gone back to the street and started talking to him, brought in a negotiator, and started talking to him about whatever, that would have been different than evacuating the whole neighborhood and bringing armored cars.
Yeah. I mean, regardless, because I don't even know.
I mean,
I don't know what happened with.
What happened just by his messages is that he feared for his life.
Yeah.
And the question is, why should he have? What was so horrendous that it deserves the death penalty? Did he hit a woman? That's pretty bad. Do you deserve to die? No, certainly not. That wasn't even the case. We think the case was, that he owned something that the police didn't like. So death penalty. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what he thought. That's what he felt in the moment.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, regardless of what was going on, I don't know, and it's just there's so much information flying around contradicting itself. But regardless of that, the police just find ways to escalate it so unnecessarily. I mean, when you show, like you said, that show of force, when you're bringing in armored personnel carriers and all the rigs and everything, it's meant to intimidate, and that's exactly what they do. But it puts the person on the other end of it in a pretty bad situation that they're,
I mean, if he had a gun, what would he have done? He might have thought there was only one way out of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, all right, on to the more important things. What is your position on tractors, Todd? What is the official Todd Hagopian, chairman of the National Libertarian Party? What is the position on tractors? Because it is something that people want to know.
Is that right?
Yes.
My position on tractors is that if you have a yard big enough for a tractor, you are spoiled.
And you should pay more tax.
No, I didn't say that.
Slappy, you're a saboteur.
I have never had a yard big enough for a tractor since I was a kid. So I would not know very much about tractors, but every time
an acceptable answer, Todd.
So wait. What it sounds to me is like you're saying if you have a tractor or the potential to have a tractor, you're an awesome guy and really lucky.
Yeah. I mean, I go to Lowe's and Home Depot, and I stop at the tractors out front every single time. And I actually, because I'm in marketing, will go through and try and figure out what the upsells are. And as I go through, I'm like, I want that. I want that. I want that. Like, if I had a yard big enough, I would want to hit this button and drive the tractor while I have my whatever kind of soda I'm drinking that night and hit the tractor away.
Absolutely. So, yeah, it's funny because I remember when I was a kid and would like have to go to the hardware store, like a Home Depot with my dad. It was the most boring thing in the world. I hated it. But now, as an adult, have my own house and everything, going to the hardware store is just like the most glorious, fun experience and I can't leave without spending at least $100. It's absurd. It's crazy. It's crazy how perspectives change a little bit as you get older.
Yeah, and I worked for years at Whirlpool Corp, and we sold appliances to those folks. And so I got used to being in there all the time, and I would see all the toys, and I'm not that kind of guy. I'm not real hands-on. And so I'm always jealous of folks who know how to do that kind of stuff, and I watch people, prepare for these large projects. Yeah, I kind of wish I had learned that, but I decided to be good with the calculator.
Hey, we need them too. And then the other really important question, and this is probably the thing that bothers me the most, but Todd, and I think you do need to correct this as you go through. But
I'm going to disagree in advance, but continue.
Oh, yeah, okay. There is a word that is used a lot in libertarian and in general. I don't know, parliament, whatever. But I question your pronunciation of the word meme.
I have heard that I'm wrong here.
It was when you were on the Fatcast the first time they're going through and you said memes. It was like I know. Just for me, it was like the record scratch. Like, what, Todd? No,
Todd. And you know what? Todd's a marketer, and he's a libertarian in chief, and he can brand himself as the mem man.
Actually, yeah.
That was so funny because the funniest part about that is, just like everybody else, right, who has anything like this, I thought I've said it right for years. I was so, and Bird corrected me, and I was like, no. Like,
it's them.
Well, you know what? Actually, just to piss Bird off, I might start calling him mems.
That would really make him mad, I think, because he lectured me at the end of that.
You know what you could also do to the lecture Bird is tell him that soy sauce belongs in Italian food.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, that's
the finest soybeans in the world come from Italy.
Now, I have a hard time saying that because it also just torques me up too, like that, because I share Italianness with Bird, so there's a little bit of pride there with the culinary purity there. I'm probably more of a food purist than I am a libertarian purist. But
I'm a food justice warrior. I like it all. You can put whatever you want in it. I'll eat it.
You don't mind? I'm gonna make a tweet, something to that effect. I'll try and jazz it up and figure out how to hit them with it before the same.
Do it.
Yeah, do it, please. That would be fantastic.
Be awesome. Actually, don't release the episode until you see the tweet.
It'll come out tonight. I'll make it happen.
Perfect. This is coming out pretty soon after we're done here.
Yeah, we don't editing.
So it'll be a race. So I think that's all I had. Slappy, do you have anything else?
Do we have a free market story?
Yeah, Todd. I'll do you have one? No, obviously no pressure.
And of course, Slappy got me thinking about phone chargers, so I'm just gonna go with the phone charger story if you don't mind.
That's fine.
I travel a lot, so I'm on the road 30 to 40% of the time, and I forget a phone charger just about every single time. Okay. Now, I buy a rental car, I go to a hotel. Every CVS along the way, every hotel sells phone chargers, but where do I buy it? I buy it at the airport. And at the airport, a phone charger is $45.
Say it's way more expensive.
Oh.
At the hotel, half the time they give it to you for free. And at the CVS, it's $3.50 or something like that. And so I can't tell you how many $45 phone chargers I bought, but it's all about supply and demand, right? I'll be in the middle. I just took my first leg. I'm about to take my second leg, and I think I have to have that phone charger for the next 3 hours before I land. So I'll spend $45. And then what do? I lose it. And then I do it again. So the last time I was in Texas, I think the hotel was selling $4 phone chargers, and they were all these kind of like hot pink. And I bought like 10 of them. And so now I have like 10 hot pink phone chargers.
Excellent.
But now it's $40, and I'll never lose all 10 of them.
Great. So if you want to support Todd Hagopian, buy him a phone charger.
That's right.
Yeah, but that is a great observation because they are stupidly expensive in an airport, but they're always there. Yeah. And if they had them at normal prices, my guess is they'd probably sell out pretty quick because there's a lot of people who wouldn't mind parting with $10 to have a charger for 3 hours. But when they see 40, some people say, well, I guess I can wait. But the people who really want and need one are able to get one.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And think about who buys them, right? Half of the people are using work cards.
Yep.
No, I don't.
Yeah, exactly.
Boston's listening. I don't use my work card. Use work cards and they buy the phone charger. You know what I mean? I see that come through on expenses all the time. And so, yeah, they can spend $40 because it's not their money.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's like I heard someone talking about how they put there's diaper vending machines at places, and they're like $10 or $20 a diaper, and people are like, that's so expensive. But then you talk to a parent, it's like, no, when you need a diaper, it doesn't matter how much it costs. And that happens to Slappy a lot, even when he doesn't have his kids with him.
Right. Yeah, I get my new diaper, $20.
I have 4 kids under 7, so I feel.
Yeah, I'm with you, Todd. Same here.
That's something else, isn't it?
It's fun.
So, Todd, thanks so much for coming on. I did really enjoy this conversation. I appreciate you, because we didn't just kind of throw you softballs or whatever. I had legitimate questions, legitimate concerns, and I thought you answered them pretty well. So can you want to let people know where they can find you, follow up with you?
And I apologize. I'm obviously under the weather, and I apologize for that. Today, you can find me at Todd Hagopian on Twitter. I'm the Libertarian in Chief. You can find me at libertarianinchief.com. That's my campaign website. And if you are on the fence of joining the Libertarian Party, you can join through toddhagopian.com. We'll take you right to the join page for the party.
Great. So that'll all be on the show notes page at mcflugel.com/172, or also check out libertymugs.com. Click that subscribe button wherever you're listening to your podcast, share it with everyone. So again, Todd, thanks for joining us. This was great.
Yeah, man. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thanks, folks.
Yep. So thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll catch you next week.
Peace.